So the function of the circulatory system is for transport, to transport blood cells, foods such as glucose and amino acids, waste carbon dioxide and waste urea. It is also needed for the protection against disease. So the blood is made up of a number of different components. The red blood cells, their function is to transport oxygen. They are adapted because they contain hemoglobin, which is rich in iron, that oxygen will combine to make oxyhemoglobin. They have no nucleus to allow them to carry more hemoglobin, and their shape is called biconcave, where it caves in on both sides, and that gives them a larger surface area. The white blood cells, there are two types, the lymphocytes and the phagocytes. Their job is to defend against disease. So the lymphocytes produce the antibodies, and the phagocytes will engulf and digest any microbes. The plasma is the liquid part of the blood, and it is needed to transport the blood cells, food, carbon dioxide, hormones and urea. And it is a straw-coloured liquid. And then the platelets, their job is for clotting blood. So they convert fibrinogen to fibrin to help with the blood clotting. The fibrin then forms a mesh to trap the blood and forms a scab. There are three types of blood vessels: arteries, veins and capillaries. So arteries carry blood at high pressure away from the heart and to other organs. They carry oxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary artery, sending blood to the lungs. They have thick muscular walls that contain elastic fibres, so the pressure of the blood is going to be high inside an artery. They have a narrow lumen for the blood to travel through, and the blood flows fast. Veins carry blood at low pressure towards the heart, so away from organs. They carry deoxygenated blood, except for the pulmonary vein, which is returning to the left side of the heart and is oxygenated. They have thinner walls than the arteries, so they have less muscle and elastic tissue present. They have a large lumen for the blood to pass through, so because of that they have valves to prevent the backflow of blood, and the blood is flowing slow. Capillaries are only one cell thick. They carry blood at low pressure within the tissues. They carry both oxygenated and deoxygenated blood because it is at the capillaries where the exchange of materials occur. So food and oxygen moves out to the cells, and waste materials like carbon dioxide and urea move back into the blood. Their walls are only one cell thick, and the speed of the flow is slow. So know the difference between your arteries, veins and capillaries. The heart is a unidirectional pump, so its job is to pump blood in one direction. The circulatory system is known as a double circulatory system because the blood has to pass through the heart twice for one complete circuit of the body. So you need to be able to label the heart. First of all, look at it and identify the left and the right side of the heart. So the left side of the heart carries oxygenated blood, the right carries deoxygenated blood. It is made up of cardiac muscle, and the heart muscle is supplied with food and oxygen through the coronary arteries. The left side will have a much more muscular wall as it has to pump the blood around the body. So when you're looking at your diagram, you look for the side that has a more muscular wall, or hold it up against you, and the left side goes with the left hand. There are valves between the upper atrium and the lower ventricles, so between the upper chambers and the lower chambers, and this again is to prevent backflow of blood. There are also valves as it leaves the ventricles and enters the arteries. So the vena cava is the main vein bringing blood back from the body, and it contains deoxygenated blood coming into the right side of the heart and enters into the right atrium. So that is the first chamber of the heart. Blood passes through the valves and enters into the right ventricle. The walls of the right ventricle contract and push the blood up through the valves into the pulmonary artery, sending the blood to the lungs. So the waste carbon dioxide gets dropped off at the lungs, oxygen gets picked up, and the oxygenated blood returns via the pulmonary vein to the left side of the heart and enters into the left atrium. Passes down through the valves into the left ventricle. The walls of the left ventricle contract and push the blood up through valves through the aorta, sending the blood at high pressure to the body. So the four chambers are the right and left atrium, and the right and left ventricles, and then your 4 blood vessels, the vena cava, the main vein, pulmonary artery out away to the lungs, the pulmonary vein coming blood back into the heart, and then the aorta, the main artery going to the body. The valves, as I mentioned, are as labelled. So as I've mentioned, arteries always take blood away from the heart towards the organs. You need to be able to label a diagram similar to this and know a number of other veins and arteries. So again, you identify the left and the right side of the heart. So as we've already mentioned, our vena cava bringing the blood back to the heart, the pulmonary artery going from the right side to the lungs, the pulmonary vein returning to the left side of the heart, oxygenated, the aorta taking the blood away from the heart, then going to the liver. It is through the hepatic artery. The hepatic portal vein links the small intestine to the liver. The hepatic vein is then connecting to the vena cava. The renal artery is the main artery supplying the kidneys, and the renal vein is taking the blood away from the kidneys. So the renal artery would contain the dirty blood, the renal vein would be the cleaned blood. So you need to know and be able to label those parts. Quite common asking about the hepatic portal vein, that link between the small intestine and the liver. So when you exercise, your heart rate or your pulse rate increases. Why is that? So the explanation you would give is that muscles need more energy as they are contracting more, that the heart is pumping more blood to the muscles to deliver more glucose and more oxygen for more respiration. So you need to be talking about those points, and particularly at least mentioning the word more once, because at normal times they are receiving the blood with glucose and oxygen, the cells are respiring, but when you're exercising, there's more respiration. The increased heart rate will give increased cardiac output. That means there's more blood volume per minute, higher pressure to get the more glucose and oxygen being delivered to the muscles. The benefits of exercise to the circulatory system are that it strengthens the heart muscle and it increases cardiac output so that more blood can be pumped per minute even when you're not exercising. Diseases of the circulatory system. So coronary heart disease is when there is a blockage of blood supply supplying the heart muscle. So the coronary arteries become narrow. The cholesterol builds up in the coronary arteries, causing them to narrow. So if that is happening, then it could form a blood clot or a blockage in those arteries. That means that there's less blood containing glucose and oxygen getting through the blocked coronary arteries to reach the heart muscle. So that means less respiration can occur in the heart muscle, so less energy can be released. The muscle cells die and cannot contract, and that causes a heart attack. Strokes is similar, except it is happening in the brain, so blood vessels are blocked. Again, blockage is due to cholesterol, so less blood passes through that blood vessel in the brain. Less glucose and oxygen gets to the cells at that point in the brain. Less respiration will occur and the cells will die, and that is a stroke. To treat cardiovascular diseases, so the first one is angioplasty and stents. Angioplasty is a medical technique that uses balloon-like structure to hold open diseased arteries so that the stents, which are the wire meshes, can be inserted into the blood vessel to keep them open. Once this is done, then the artery is widened and more blood can flow through them. Drugs that can be given as well. So statins are a group of drugs that lower blood cholesterol levels. Aspirin quite often is given after heart attacks, and it is taken to thin the blood and make the blood less sticky. So let's look at some questions. So this is a foundation to your question. Complete the sentences about the different types of blood vessel in the body by writing in the correct word in the spaces, and you're choosing from the words backflow, pumping, capillaries, arteries, permeable and impermeable. So what carries blood under pressure away from the heart? So arteries carry blood away from the heart. Veins carry blood back to the heart. They have valves to prevent the backflow of blood. Capillaries allow the exchange of substances with tissues through permeable walls. The diagram shows a heart with its blood vessels. Use this diagram and your knowledge to answer the questions that follow. Blood passes through the heart twice when completing one circuit of the body. Name this type of blood circulation. So this is known as a double circulatory system, so double circulation. The diagram below shows the pathway of oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart and then through the heart to the organs of the body. Complete the diagram by writing the names of the blood vessels and heart chambers in the box. So from the lungs, it travels back to the heart through blood vessel B, which is known as your pulmonary vein, entering into the left atrium, then down into the left ventricle, and then leaves through the aorta to the organs of the body. Here's a higher tier question. The diagram shows part of the brain and blood cells of a patient who has suffered a stroke. So have a look at the diagram of the two different arteries. Read the questions and see how you would answer them. So describe two differences between the normal artery and the artery causing the stroke. So when we look at them, we can see that the artery causing the stroke has fatty deposits present in it or cholesterol present in it, causing the artery to be narrower, or the artery is blocked. Explain how these differences may lead to a stroke. So for 1 mark, by them being narrower, it would reduce the blood flow to the brain cells or the brain tissue would die. Describe how angioplasty and stents could be used to treat this patient. So this is for 2 marks. Think of what you would say. So your angioplasty is a wire mesh or a stent being inserted. The balloon is inflated and then the balloon is deflated or removed and the wire mesh will remain. Explain then how angioplasty and stents help reduce the risk of this patient suffering another stroke. So how does this stent help? So you want to be mentioning the idea that the stent will help to widen the artery so the lumen remains wider, so we've got increased blood flow. The wire mesh keeps the blood vessel open, allowing more oxygen and glucose to pass through. The diagram shows the functions of some parts of the brain. Use the information from both diagrams to suggest which part function of this patient may be affected by a stroke. So we need to go back to this earlier part of the question. So we can see here on the diagram where the normal artery is and where the artery causing the stroke. So we keep that in mind. We move forward then to the question. So the part that we can see in the diagram which was narrow was the part that was pointing to the speech part. Another question, the diagram shows a section through a heart. Name blood vessels A and B and chamber C. So first of all, identify the left and the right side of the heart. So the left side has a thicker wall, so that has to be the side X. So Y is the right side. So the main blood vessel coming into the right side is your vena cava. B is the blood vessel that is leaving the left side, so that is the aorta, and chamber C is going to be the left atrium. Explain why the muscle wall is thicker at X than Y. So X is thicker because that is the left side is having to send blood a longer distance around the body, so it is giving it greater contraction or putting blood under greater pressure. Describe the function of valve Z. So valve Z you can see there between the upper and lower chamber of the right side of the heart. So its function for 2 marks is to prevent the backflow of blood, either going back into the right atrium or from the right ventricle. The diagram shows a normal heart valve and a faulty heart valve in closed and open positions. Describe one difference in the function of the normal and faulty heart valve and suggest how this may affect the flow of blood through the heart. So again, look at it. You can see when it's closed, the faulty one is still remaining slightly open. And when it's open, it's not, the faulty one doesn't open as wide as the normal one. So keep that in mind if you were thinking. So describe one difference in the functioning of the normal and faulty heart valve and suggest for one mark, and then suggest how this may affect the flow of blood through the heart. So one difference would be that it doesn't open fully or it doesn't close fully, so either or. And this would then reduce the blood flow through the heart or reduce the pressure, so less blood is getting through. People with faulty heart valves often suffer from a lack of energy and tiredness. Suggest or think of a reason why. So if they're not getting enough blood through, then there's going to be less oxygen or less glucose getting to the muscles or tissues. So therefore less respiration will occur. And that is the end of circulatory system.